All right, Brian, in part two of today's show here on the Irish Breakdown podcast brought to you by FanDuel, we're talking the keys to victory for the Notre Dame defense. This is an interesting conversation because the shining light for Boise State this season has been their offense. First game, they were figuring out what their identity was without Ashton Jeanty as their starting running back. It's the first time they played a game without him in the backfield in 2 years. And as the weeks have gone on, they've started to find a little bit more of an offensive identity. This is kind of that strength versus struggle that we talked about. Notre Dame's defense had a good performance against Arkansas, but they're going to have to build on it. And they're going to have to make sure that they continue ascending. So the first key to victory for this unit, Brian, it's plain and simple. You have to be disciplined. And I think you could take that in a bunch of different directions. But Brian, key number one, stay disciplined on defense.
This isn't like a vintage Boise offense, but philosophically, they're very similar to what Boise's always been. And what does that mean? A lot of motions, a lot of shifts, a lot of different personnel groupings. They're going to do a lot of things to create extra gaps in the offensive line for the run game. And by creating extra gaps, so even out of 11 personnel, Trev, they'll put a tight end with a outside receiver, and then they'll bring Latrell Caples and put him in a wing and have him block wide. And what that does is that adds an extra gap to their run game. Sometimes they'll run away from it and then cut back to it. Sometimes they'll run to it. And the whole point of that, Trevor, is the more surface area that we can create from a run game standpoint, the more gaps that we have to make you responsible for, the more opportunities that a team without discipline is able to then go rip off a big play. If you watch the Boise State offense against Appalachian State, this is a perfect example. I didn't do like efficiency numbers, Trev, because I don't count another team's efficiency. I don't like get into that. But like if you go look at it, they ran for 152 yards. Boise did. They didn't run the ball well against App State. What they did, however, is take advantage of mistakes by Appalachian State. The one time you make a gap mistake, you get sealed inside, you're going to get beat. And what I thought about doing in this one, Trevor, is I thought about, and this is part of, so this is why I went discipline, is I thought about saying like win the leverage battle. But I decided to go with be disciplined because it's bigger than just that. But this is what we talk about, though. By going extra hats, that you run the risk if you don't align properly to it, to the overload looks, you run the risk of a defense of getting basically washed inside, and then that sucker just bounces out with ease. And that's what they did against App State. That's what they did against Air Force. That's what they did against Eastern Washington. And it's not so much about their dudes are better than your dudes. It's about trying to get you into making a mistake. They will hammer you 240. That's what they're going to try to do. I do think Boise State's going to try to shorten this game. I don't think they want to get into a shootout against Notre Dame. And so they're going to be at their pregame or pre-snap movement alignment best against Notre Dame to try to say, we've got to put their defensive line and linebackers into some bad spots where we've got leverage advantages on them, either to get outside or to get some down blocks with some kickouts in hopes of getting up to the linebackers and then kicking out their ends, maybe catch them in a slant or a twist, and then rip off a big run. That's what Boise's going to do. Same thing the pass game. They do a lot of post-snap, and this is why I decided to go, instead of like two different points, to put it into one, pass game-wise, Trev, they do a lot of levels concepts, which is something Notre Dame has struggled with this season. They do a lot of post-snap switching, which requires post-snap communication. And that has resulted in the other team turning guys loose. If you're disciplined in how you go at Boise State, you should not only just slow them down, but you can hold them under 20 points. No question. But at the end of the day, you just have to avoid those big plays that they're going to try to create. And when I mean big plays, I don't just mean 20-plus yard gains. I mean that 8-yard gain on 1st and 10 that should have been a 2-yard gain because your backside linebacker didn't hit the proper gap, or your edge has got out-leveraged. Your safety run fit inside because he didn't recognize they had 2 extra gaps on the outside. Those are things that I talk about when it comes to discipline that are going to be important. When you're a defensive back, don't go underneath a blocker. Go over top and force the guy back inside. All those things are about discipline that are going to limit Boise's chances for big plays. Because if this comes down to Boise's going to go on a bunch of 8-9 play drives, they have no chance, because I don't know that they're good enough up front. And I don't know if they're good enough at the skill positions to just make those type of drives happen like they could last year. And so you've got to make sure that it's not about mistakes. Because, Trev, we saw this even Penn State and Oregon. You'd have it perfectly schemed up. Everybody does their job, but Ascengenti would just make somebody look foolish and turn a 2-yard gain into a 30-yard gain. They don't have those type of backs this year. Their backs are good, but they're like really good G5 backs, solid, power 4 backs. Last year, they had the best running back in college football and one of the best of the last, 10, 20 years, the way he played last year. They don't have that. So if you're disciplined, you're going to keep their run game in check. But you're also going to limit the big plays in the pass game. And it's the big plays that concern me. But the reason that I went with be disciplined instead of big plays is because it's not about the big play. They're not going to create big plays because they're so good. They're going to get those big plays because you make mistakes. And then the final piece of being disciplined is don't give them easy first downs. Don't give them easy yards. Don't jump off sides. They're going to try to get you to jump off sides. They'll go under center. They'll do hard cadences. They'll do all those type of things. Don't have some dumb penalty that gives them a first down, some illegal hit to the head, something like that gives them cheap yards. That's the final piece of discipline is, yes, do your job, do it the right way. Don't look for the big play. Just, aggressively do your job, but then don't do anything that gives them, make them earn everything. Don't give them yards. Don't give them points. Don't give them opportunities. Don't, have a third down converted, covered, but because you don't trust your technique or do what you're taught to do, you end up holding in a situation you have no reason to hold. And next thing you know, it's first down, they go down and score, and then they took another 4 minutes off the clock. It's that kind of stuff, Trev. It's just be disciplined. If you be disciplined and you execute your next point, which I know you'll lead us to, then again, I don't know that Boise State has much of a chance in this game.
Oh, agreed. And talking about not having a chance in this game, if Notre Dame can build on what they did a little bit against Purdue, a little bit more against Arkansas, hopefully they can start to put it together here against Boise State at home. It's be aggressive. And you and I are going to be shouting this from the rooftops until we see an entire game that's been executed well and has been aggressive for the majority of the time that they're on the field. It's been one of the things that's still been missing. Big picture, when we dove into it and upon further review that's on the message boards at boards@irishbreakdown.com, that was still one of the things, despite holding Arkansas to 13 points, they still weren't as aggressive as we would have liked to see and what they need to be moving forward. So that's a huge key for this game.
It is. And this is about this game and moving forward, Trev. And I thought about putting this one first, but I was like, no, I think the discipline thing is more important. But I just don't want to see you sit back against Boise because they will hammer you. This is a pretty good offensive line. What's funny is I watch them on film, and I don't think they're that big. They don't look that big on film. And then you look at them, they're like 315, 312, 320, and you're like, okay, maybe they're a little bigger than I thought. But they're tough. They're not super athletic up front. They're strong. They'll battle. But if you just sit back and just kind of play a standard defense like we've seen a lot of the time, they're going to run the ball on you. I mean, they are. They're different backs than the kids that Arkansas faced. I'm not worried about the quarterback run like you were last week. Maddox Madsen can tuck the ball and scramble, move the chains, and that fine. But he's not a guy that you're like, hey, we lost the game because of Maddox Madsen's legs, like you could have to Taylon Green or even Ryan Brown to a degree. But they will run it on you. They will gap scheme you, counter you, and just blow you off the ball and run it at you if you're just sitting back playing passive football. Their linebackers or their linemen do a really nice job of getting up to the second level, coming off combo blocks, and getting to linebackers that aren't aggressive. If you want to attack this run game, you've got to hammer it. And this isn't about necessarily blitzing, and it's a mindset that will include that. Let Drake Bowen and Kingston, Viliama Asa, and Jaden Alsbury, and Madden Faremo, and Jalen Sneed attack downhill. It's kind of similar to the offensive point. You're a way more athletic team than them. Take advantage of it. Your defensive line is more athletic than their offensive line. So, take advantage of it. Attack downhill. Be more aggressive going after the ball, because this is a kid that will throw the ball up, and we'll talk more about that in point 3. But this is a kid that will make mistakes. But if you're not aggressive attacking the football, if you're not aggressive in your pressures, those mistakes won't be as frequent and they won't be as damaging to Boise State. So a big part of this thing for me, Trev, is I just want to see a team that plays that mindset. And it goes beyond Boise. This is also about saying, hey, we've learned from our mistakes. We know we can't be that team anymore. It's not like my fear is that last week was you are learning the defense better, which allowed you to make some mistakes, limit some mistakes. Arkansas made their mistakes. You took advantage of a team that you have better players than, but I don't know if that would have translated as well if they were playing a better team, or if their offense wasn't having to play from behind so much like they were in that game. And that's my concern. And so this is an opportunity to still say, hey, look, no, we're gonna ramp it up a little bit more. We may not blitz like we did last year, but we're gonna be more aggressive going at this offense. If you sit back and let Boise State dictate the tempo and pressure to you, they will run the ball on you. And that leads to point 3. But I want to get to finish this one off, Trev, because I want to get your thoughts. I think this is more than just about Boise. This key right here about being more aggressive, this is more than just about Boise. This is about setting a tone for the rest of the year on defense and getting back to who this team should be. You want to show me that this is the Notre Dame defense? Then let these kids attack. Let these kids fly around. Let these kids fly to the football, and stop having them go backwards all the time or stagnant all the time, because you want to have all the checks. You want to have all the things. Let these kids attack. Let these kids fly to the football. Be aggressive. It's not just about this week, though. It's this week leads into the rest of the year. Because if you try, look, let's just be real. USC will not be held to 13 points if you repeat your performance from last week. I don't know that NC State will. So you've got to last week was a good first step. Now you got to take another step. Last week was not your we've arrived moment.
Yeah, I think you hit all the main points, man. I mean, look, this is the one aspect of their defense that has been lapsed. And honestly, the biggest disappointment going throughout the season. You're going to face quarterbacks down the road that can pick you apart. Look, I'm sorry. Respect to Taylon Green and Marcel Reed. They don't have the accuracy to pick you apart. They don't. You could execute zone perfectly, but what do good, accurate quarterbacks do? Find holes in the zone. Why? Because there's holes in the zone. Sometimes football is not that complicated. Taylon Green's not that guy to do that. Marcel Reed's not that guy to do that. Jade Maeva can. Dylan Lonergan can. Eli Holstein, if he's protected, could. And so it's just, you have all of these quarterbacks that are coming up on your schedule that this is why it's so important to build on. And yes, it'd be nice to see it against Boise State. And I'm not naive to the fact that Notre Dame doesn't have to play overly aggressive to beat Boise State by double digits. They don't. They could play exactly how they played against Purdue and just come out and play a vanilla defense and not get hands on receivers, not try to redirect anybody. They could do something dumb like try to drop Donovan Heinisch into coverage, and they could do all that stuff, and they could beat Boise State by 2 touchdowns. Not naive to that fact at all, but it's about setting the precedent moving forward, and that's something that they're going to have to do. But, Brian, one thing that they are going to have to do specific to this game is they're going to have to find a way to stop the run. Big picture numbers in the box score against Arkansas, Notre Dame was able to stop the run when you just look at the total output. But then when you add a little bit of context in there and you know that Arkansas had 126 yards at the end of the first half, it was more so Notre Dame's offense taking Arkansas's run game out than the Notre Dame defense taking Arkansas's run game out. And, you look at a quarterback like Maddox Madsen, he is not somebody that's going to be able to drop back and pick you apart on straight dropbacks. You go and you look at some of the numbers, and on straight dropbacks, he's completing about 58% of his passes. But when Boise State's been able to run the football, when they've been able to establish the line of scrimmage, on play-action passes, he's completing close to 64% of his passes. That's what Boise State wants to do on offense, and Notre Dame is going to have to make them one-dimensional within that, and they're going to have to stop the run.
There's a lot of things, Trev, when you look at Maddox, you look at this offense, and it looks very different, like statistically, than what we saw last season. I mean, in each of the last 3 games, Boise's been over 300 yards passing. It looks great, and they've got good skill. I mean, Latrell Capers is a good football player. Chris Marshall's a former top recruit that was at SEC schools. Matt Lauder's one of the better tight ends they're going to face this year, and their running backs are weapons out of the backfield. And their scheme is good. They've got good scheme. I mean, these are good football coaches. But to your point, Maddox Madsen's not that guy that's going to sit back in the pocket and rip you up and just for 60 minutes. I just don't see it. I mean, he's a nice quarterback and he can, make some plays, and his numbers look great. I mean, threw for 321 against App State, threw for 307 against Eastern Washington, threw for 276 against Air Force. I think he's more the kid that we saw against South Florida. Like made some big throws against Penn State last year. Like, he's a gutsy kid. But he also threw 3 picks, and because they forced him into. They said, look, Ashton Genty's not going to beat us. If you're going to beat us, you got to beat us with Maddox Madsen. And he made a couple throws. He had a really, I think it was a corner route, maybe it was a seam to Matt Lauder for a big play last year. Like, he'll make a couple of those. But I can live with that. I've said this before. I'll live with a couple big plays being given up as long as you don't let them turn into touchdowns. It's the constant 10s to 12s that you're giving up that's hurt this team so much. But I just look back and say, if you're going to make Maddox Madsen beat you, and then make him beat you down the field because you're being more aggressive, you're taking away the quick game. Because if you're just going to let him nickel and dime you all day, he can do that. Anyone can do that. But if he's going to try to beat you down the field, that now you're playing in, they're playing into your hands. Because you talk about, pure drop backs and all this other kind of stuff. I'll give you, I got some numbers for you too, Trev. Maddox Madsen on throws beyond 20 yards past line of scrimmage is only 37.5% completion rate on the season. He's 6 of 16. On throws from 10 to 19 yards, he's 19 of 37, which is only good for a 51.4% completion rate. And if you look at it from all throws 10 yards past the line of scrimmage, he's only completing 47.2% of his passes. That's it. And so if you can force him to throw the ball down the field, then you're going to win. And hey, this is not an anomaly that, let's say, because he was really bad against South Florida. Well, okay, yeah. Guys, he was only at 58.3% on 10 to 19 last year, and he was at 35.3% on deep balls last year. He's actually slightly better on deep balls this year than he was last year. But he's still in the 30s in both regards. And if you look at last year, Trev, he completed 85 out of 166 throws beyond 10 yards. That's 51.2%. That means if that ball has to go more than 10 yards past the line of scrimmage, over the last 2 years, it's a 50-50 proposition for Boise State.
Yeah, coin flip if it's getting completed.
Beyond 10 yards.
Yeah.
CJ Carr's at like 64%. On throws of beyond that. I'm sorry. Beyond 10. But he's like in the high 60s, 70s in 10 to 19. Now, behind the line of scrimmage this year, he's 90%. That in that range from 0 to 9, he's a 70.6%. So he's over about an 80% passer, high 70% passer if you let him throw a quick game. Why would you let him throw a quick game?
Which goes back to our second key to victory is being aggressive. If you let Maddox Madsen, if it's 3rd and 5 and you're dropping your closest defender to the football to 7 yards of depth, it's exactly what they want. It's exactly what they want. If you're able to be aggressive, stop the run, this Boise State offense is going to have a really hard time moving the football. But Brian, you're 100% right. He's somebody that is not comfortable pushing the ball down the field. He's not effective pushing the ball down the field. I mean, through 4 games, he has 6 completions at 20 yards or longer. That's one of those, it's just like, that's not a strong suit of his. They don't ask him to do it a whole lot. So absolutely a major key to this game. I couldn't agree more, Brian.
I got to tell you, Trevor, if we come into this game and we watch them just kind of go out and do exactly what you're talking about, I'm gonna lose it. I don't know how you watch this football team and say, hey, let's let them complete these easy throws. Let's let them hit these crossers. Like, no, this is a guy that over the last 2 years is a 50-50 quarterback when it comes to throwing the ball past 10 yards. If you don't do things schematically to force him to throw the ball past 10 yards, then you're not a very good football coach.
Yeah.
And so that's why I hope that we're going to see Chris Ash be more aggressive and say, hey, look, there are some quarterbacks that are just, man, you just can't let them. Like, if I'm playing Notre Dame, I'm not daring CJ Carr to throw the ball down the field. Yeah, I'm just not. Boise State, I am.
Yeah.
I'm definitely going to do that because he's just not good at it. And so I just make him beat you.
One thing that I thought was interesting that I brought up yesterday, I was seeing if it was changed at all, but it hadn't. And on FanDuel, you still can't bet on any Boise State running back rushing props. Still. And Maddox Madsen's over-under passing yards, I believe, is at 215.5. But you still can't bet on FanDuel, you can't bet on a single Boise State running back to get any yards. You can bet on them to get touchdowns, but not one of them. I thought that was interesting as well.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting, Trevor. I'm really curious to see, what Notre Dame is able to do against him this game. I'm really curious to see, because it's going to tell us a lot about, are you really coaching to your opponent and to your players? This is also a kid, Trev, that you talk about, his completion percentage in a clean pocket is 67%, 7 touchdowns, 1 pick. His completion percentage when he's under pressure is 34.5 under pressure this season. Last season, in a clean pocket, Maddox Madsen, 67.4% completion rate, 19 touchdowns, 3 picks. Last year, Maddox Madsen, when under pressure, completed 42.9% of his passes, 4 touchdowns and 3 picks. It's all right there in front of you. In 20 career starts, over 20 career starts, this is who this kid has been. And so I just need to see him. The year before, 2023, completed 45.5% of his passes, 1 touchdown, 1 pick on plays where he was under pressure. Like, make this kid beat you. Because if it comes down to Maddox Madsen versus the Notre Dame defense, and that's the only chance you have of winning is Maddox Madsen going off, you're either not going to lose that football game, or you just don't have the right people running your defense. And so if I'm going to lose to Boise State, I'm going to make Maddox Madsen beat me, because he can't.
Last key to victory that we have on the defensive side of the ball, Brian, is tackle well. Make them go on long drives. I think tackling for Notre Dame has steadily improved over the last couple of weeks, but it has to continue this week. Absolutely.
Yeah, no doubt. It really has, because it was bad the first couple games. I mean, especially in game 2. They were good against Purdue, but we said, hey, look, does Purdue really have the playmakers to make you pay in that regard? Tackling was good for the most part last week. You had a couple missed tackles in the box on some short yardage runs and some bad fits. But, did Arkansas really have a bunch of guys can make you miss? Not really, outside of their quarterback. Boise does. They have more of that. They have more guys that can kind of make you miss. Their running backs can make you miss in space. Their receivers can make you miss in space. Not like, oh my gosh, this looks like A&M all over again. They're not that at all. But they're more dynamic than what the Arkansas guys had in space last week in the backfield.
Yeah.
Receiving core is comparable in that regard. I think this is a similar receiving core to what you faced the last couple weeks, because the receiving cores for your last 2 opponents were pretty good. Yep. Purdue had good receivers, and Arkansas had really good receivers. When I look at Boise, I look at Latrell Capers, I look at Chris Marshall, and I look at the tight ends and say they've got pretty good weapons in the pass game. With a better quarterback, these guys would be pretty I'd be much more concerned about their pass game. Like, my whole thing about their pass game is Maddox Madsen. And the concern I have, and we didn't bring this up, Trev, I should have mentioned this. Their tackles their left tackle's as good as any left tackle they're going to face this year, especially in pass pro. That's a specialty. They've been pretty good in pass pro this year for the most part. And so, like you got to get some pressure on them. But when they're going to get the ball in space, back to the tackling thing, you've got to bring them down. You can't give them up. You can't give up the cheap yards. You can't let a 2-yard gain turn into a 6-yard gain. You can't let a 6-yard gain turn into a 20-yard gain. You've got to make Boise earn every play, because at the end of the day, Trev, the reason I make that point about make them go on long drives is because I don't think they're good enough to do that. I don't think they're good enough to just go on a bunch of 7-8-yard play drives to beat you. A&M wasn't good enough to do that. If you would have taken away just 3 of A&M's big plays in that game, you win that game. You just take 2 of them away. If you could just tackle that guy at midfield, you don't know that they're going to go down and score. We don't know that. I'm thinking of their first touchdown of the game. You just tackle them at midfield. Who knows if A&M goes down and scores, and who knows what happens in that play. So those are the things you look at and say, I want to see this team do a better job of, or making sure they continue to do a better job of tackling well in space. And when you get shots on Maddox Madsen, bring them down.
Agreed. Well, folks, that is going to do it for part 2 of today's show. Don't go anywhere. We are getting ready to talk game predictions and game records. But before we get there, make sure you hit that like button. Make sure you subscribe to this channel. That notification bell is hit so you know whenever we go live. Whatever streaming platform you listen to us on, we would greatly appreciate a 5-star review. But as always, the best way to support what we do here is subscribe to the premium message boards at boards.irishbreakdown.com.